I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Your sleeping mind is one of the most honest places you will ever visit. It surfaces what your waking hours quietly bury. You'll discover why the fears that wake you at 3 in the morning may be the most truthful things your brain has ever tried to say, and understand why nightmares are not your enemy. Welcome to Sleepy Science. Wherever you are right now, perhaps lying in the quiet dark, or feeling that familiar heaviness settling through your limbs, allow yourself this slow arrival. We'll journey through 100 sleep science facts about nightmares and what they reveal, from the ancient brain circuits that generate fear at night, to the emotional processing systems that turn your deepest anxieties into vivid stories, to the surprising comfort hidden inside your most frightening dreams. This thoughtful journey through the sleeping mind builds bridges between restless hearts. A gentle subscribe, a quiet like, or sharing this space creates a pathway for more curious souls to discover what their own minds are trying to tell them, and brings us closer to protecting this sanctuary for every tired mind who finds their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. Your presence here means more than you know. Let yourself settle completely here. Feel your jaw unclench, your breath deepen naturally. You can let these thoughts drift past without holding them. Sense that soothing heaviness enveloping you, like your consciousness slowly dimming its brightness, thoughts dissolving into the peaceful fog of approaching sleep, safe and undisturbed. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're floating where memories rest safely in gentle darkness. Let your mind merge with infinite peace. And now we begin. Nightmares are not random noise from a resting brain. They are structured, purposeful narratives generated by one of the most evolutionarily ancient parts of your mind. Scientists studying sleep across decades have consistently found that nightmares follow recognizable emotional themes. Themes that map almost perfectly onto a person's most pressing, unresolved concerns. The brain does not simply replay fear at night. It constructs stories around fear as though trying to find an ending. Tonight, we begin by understanding what nightmares actually are and why your brain bothers to create them at all. The word nightmare comes from an Old English word meaning a female spirit thought to suffocate sleepers in the night. For centuries, people interpreted bad dreams as visitations, something done to them from outside. It took until the 20th century for sleep researchers to discover the truth. Nightmares emerge entirely from within. They are yours. They are made from your memories, your fears, your unprocessed emotions. Nothing visits you in sleep that your own mind did not first invite in, however quietly, however long ago. There is something quietly freeing about that. What the mind creates, the mind can also, in time, gently release. Most nightmares occur during REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, the phase characterized by intense brain activity, temporary muscle paralysis, and vivid dreaming. REM sleep cycles through the night in repeating periods, growing longer with each cycle. The longest and most emotionally intense REM periods tend to arrive in the final hours before waking, which is why nightmares often strike in the early morning rather than just after falling asleep. Your brain saves its most complex emotional processing for last. The amygdala is the brain structure most closely associated with nightmares. This small, almond-shaped cluster of neurons sits deep within the temporal lobe and acts as the brain's primary threat detection center. During REM sleep, the amygdala becomes unusually active, more active, in some studies, than it is during waking fear responses. While the rational prefrontal cortex quiets down during REM, the amygdala remains fully alert, processing emotional content without the moderating influence of logic. This imbalance is part of why dream fear can feel so overwhelming and so real. Fear is not the only emotion that nightmares carry, though it is the most common. Research cataloging nightmare content across thousands of participants has consistently found that the most frequent nightmare themes include being chased, falling, being attacked, feeling helpless or trapped, losing someone, failing an important task, and being humiliated in public. What is worth pausing on is how universal this list is. People in vastly different cultures, speaking different languages, living in entirely different circumstances, dream about remarkably similar fears. Nightmares seem to speak a language older than any human culture. Not all disturbing dreams qualify as nightmares in the clinical sense. Sleep researchers draw a distinction between bad dreams and nightmares based on one key factor: awakening. A bad dream is one that contains negative or frightening content, but does not wake the sleeper. A nightmare is defined as a disturbing dream that causes the person to wake up, often abruptly, heart racing, with a lingering emotional residue. This distinction matters because it changes how the brain processes the experience. Waking from a nightmare interrupts the emotional regulation cycle that sleep is supposed to complete. Approximately 65 to 70% of adults report experiencing nightmares at least occasionally. Between 4 and 8% of the general adult population experiences frequent nightmares, those occurring at least once per week. According to multiple large-scale sleep surveys conducted in recent years, among certain groups, particularly people who have experienced trauma, rates climb significantly higher. The experience of nightmares is not unusual, and it is not a sign that something is fundamentally wrong with a person. For most people, nightmares are the brain's occasional, imperfect attempt to process something it hasn't yet resolved. Children experience nightmares at far higher rates than adults. Nightmares are considered developmentally normal between the ages of 3 and 6, when children's imaginations are rapidly expanding, but their emotional regulation systems are still maturing. Studies suggest that between 10 and 50% of children in this age range experience nightmares frequently enough to disturb sleep. As the prefrontal cortex develops through adolescence, nightmare frequency typically decreases, a quiet neurological milestone that most people never notice happening. The content of nightmares changes across a lifetime. Young children tend to dream about monsters, animals, and separation from caregivers. Adolescents report more social nightmares: humiliation, rejection, failure. Adults most commonly report chase dreams, falling dreams, and dreams of helplessness. Older adults tend to experience nightmares less frequently overall, though the nightmares they do have tend to carry more specific, memory-linked content. The brain's fear vocabulary evolves as life experience accumulates. What frightens you in your dreams at 40 is rarely what frightened you at 8. Here is what the research has quietly been suggesting for decades. Nightmares are not failures of the sleeping brain. They are attempts. They are the mind's effortful, if clumsy, strategy for making emotional meaning out of experiences that waking logic has not fully digested. The fears that appear in your nightmares are not random. They are selected, drawn from the specific emotional landscape of your life, shaped by your particular history, and presented in narrative form as though the brain believes that giving fear a story might help it find a resolution. Your nightmares know you better than you might expect. One of the most carefully studied theories about nightmares comes from the threat simulation theory, proposed by Finnish neuroscientist Antti Revonsuo. According to this framework, dreaming, and nightmare dreaming in particular, evolved as a biological rehearsal system. The sleeping brain simulates threatening scenarios so that the waking organism can be better prepared to respond to them. From an evolutionary standpoint, a brain that practices fear responses during sleep may be better equipped to survive real threats. Nightmares, in this view, are not malfunctions. They are ancient survival training. Supporting Revonsuo's threat simulation theory, studies have found that in nightmare dreams, people rarely behave in completely passive ways. Even in frightening scenarios, dreamers often attempt to fight back, flee, hide, or call for help. The brain is not simply generating fear for its own sake. It is generating fear within a scenario that includes response options. The rehearsal aspect of the nightmare is embedded in its structure. You are not just experiencing the fear. You are, in some primitive sense, practicing living through it. Sleep researchers have used brain imaging technology to map what happens in the brain during REM sleep, and the findings illuminate why nightmares feel so vivid. During REM, the visual cortex becomes highly active, generating imagery without input from the eyes. The motor cortex shows activity, explaining why dream movement feels so real. Though descending motor signals are blocked to prevent the body from acting out dreams, the emotional centers run hot. The logical centers quiet down. The result is an experience that feels completely real while it is happening, because to the brain generating it, in the most functional sense, it is. The relationship between stress and nightmares is well established. Studies consistently show that people under significant psychological or physical stress experience nightmares at higher rates. This relationship is bidirectional. Stress triggers nightmares, and nightmare-disrupted sleep increases stress. The mechanism appears to involve cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, which affects REM sleep architecture. Elevated cortisol before sleep has been shown to increase the emotional intensity of dream content, in some cases tipping ordinary dream narratives toward fearful or threatening themes. Your body's stress chemistry writes itself into your dreams. Certain medications are known to significantly increase nightmare frequency and intensity. Beta blockers, used primarily to treat heart conditions and high blood pressure, can cause vivid nightmares as a documented side effect. Some are also prescribed off-label for performance anxiety, carrying the same risk. Some antidepressants, particularly those that increase norepinephrine, also intensify dream content. Drugs that suppress REM sleep, including alcohol, tend to produce a rebound effect. When stopped, REM sleep increases dramatically, often flooding the nights following cessation with unusually intense and disturbing dreams. The chemistry of what we consume follows us into sleep in ways we rarely anticipate. Among the most thoroughly researched areas of nightmare science is the relationship between nightmares and post-traumatic stress. People who have experienced significant trauma often report nightmare content that directly or symbolically replays the traumatic event. These trauma-related nightmares tend to be more stereotyped, repeating the same narrative elements across many nights, and more physiologically intense than ordinary nightmares. Where ordinary nightmares are the brain's attempt to process and file emotional content, trauma nightmares often represent the brain's repeated, unsuccessful attempt to do the same thing with material too overwhelming to resolve. Researchers have found that trauma nightmares differ from ordinary nightmares in their neurological profile. In typical nightmares, the brain eventually achieves some degree of emotional resolution. The narrative concludes. The sleeper wakes. The heart rate settles. In trauma-related nightmares, the emotional arousal often prevents the resolution cycle from completing, leading to fragmented sleep and heightened morning anxiety. This is one reason why effective treatment for trauma-related nightmares targets the nightmare content directly, not merely the daytime anxiety, because the nightmares are themselves a distinct disruption to the brain's healing process. Image rehearsal therapy is currently one of the most validated treatments for chronic nightmare disorder, particularly nightmares associated with trauma. Developed and refined over several decades, the approach asks people to write down a recurring nightmare, then consciously rewrite its ending while awake, changing any element of the narrative they choose. The rewritten version is then mentally rehearsed during waking hours. Studies have found that this seemingly simple technique significantly reduces nightmare frequency and intensity over time. The waking mind, it turns out, has the power to gently renegotiate what the sleeping mind rehearses. Nightmares are not exclusively a human experience, or at least, the neural machinery that might generate them appears to be broadly shared. Research has found that REM sleep occurs widely across mammals and birds. Studies of sleeping rats found that hippocampal neurons replayed sequences of maze navigation during sleep, patterns nearly identical to those active while the rats were actually running the maze. This neural replay is understood as a form of memory consolidation. Whether it constitutes anything like subjective dreaming or something resembling a nightmare remains genuinely unknown. What it does suggest is that the sleeping brain's habit of revisiting experience is ancient and not uniquely ours. Recent neuroimaging research has refined our understanding of which brain regions are most active during nightmare-generating dreams. Beyond the amygdala, studies published in the past few years have highlighted the role of the anterior cingulate cortex, a region involved in emotional evaluation and conflict detection, in determining whether a dream becomes distressing enough to trigger waking. The anterior cingulate seems to act as a kind of emotional thermometer during sleep, registering the intensity of dream content. When its activity crosses a threshold, the sleeper wakes. It is, in a sense, the brain's nightmare alarm system. Lucid dreaming, the state in which a dreamer becomes aware that they are dreaming, has been proposed as a potential tool for managing nightmares. In lucid dreams, dreamers who recognize they are in a nightmare can sometimes alter the dream's narrative or simply remind themselves that the fear they feel is not real. Research on this approach has yielded encouraging findings in smaller studies, though larger controlled trials have yet to confirm its reliability as a consistent nightmare intervention. For some people, it offers a meaningful degree of agency within the dream itself, the ability to introduce a flicker of waking awareness into the heart of a frightening night. The content of nightmares can be influenced by sensory input during sleep. Studies have demonstrated that exposing sleeping participants to mild, unpleasant odors during REM sleep increases the negative emotional tone of dream content, while pleasant odors appear to shift dreams toward more positive imagery. Similarly, sounds presented during sleep have been shown to be incorporated into dream narratives. The sleeping brain is not entirely sealed off from the external world. It receives sensory information continuously, filtering most of it, while weaving some into the fabric of what it is already constructing. Your environment participates in your dreams quietly. The gender differences in nightmare content and frequency are among the more consistent findings in sleep research. Studies across multiple cultures have found that women report nightmares more frequently than men, on average, and that women's nightmares tend to involve interpersonal themes, conflict, loss, and harm to loved ones. Men's nightmares more often involve physical threat and confrontation. Researchers have proposed various explanations, including hormonal influences on REM sleep, differences in emotional processing and memory encoding, and social factors affecting willingness to recall and report distressing dream content. The gap is real, though its full explanation remains an open question. Nightmare disorder, distinguished from ordinary nightmares by its frequency, severity, and impact on daytime functioning, is recognized as a clinical condition in diagnostic frameworks used by sleep medicine and psychiatry. Estimates suggest that somewhere between 2 and 5% of adults meet criteria for nightmare disorder at any given time, with significantly higher rates among those with mood disorders, anxiety disorders, and post-traumatic conditions. The condition is treatable. This is worth knowing quietly. In the dark, what feels like an intractable nightly disturbance is, from a clinical standpoint, one of the more responsive conditions in all of sleep medicine. And so we arrive at the end of our first passage through the science of nightmares. What has emerged already is a portrait of something far more purposeful than random terror. The nightmare is the brain's oldest emotional language, a system evolved across millions of years, not to torture us, but to prepare us, to process us, to help us survive the things we most fear by rehearsing them in the relative safety of sleep. Your nightmares are, in the truest biological sense, trying to help you. The question our journey will continue to explore is this: what exactly are they trying to say? Let's pause here and notice your body. As you breathe out slowly, appreciate each tiny cell inside. Trillions of organisms working in silence, heart beating, lungs breathing, brain thinking, all without your command. Notice the gentle sensations on your skin, in your muscles, along your spine. You are a complete ecosystem, diverse, self-balancing. Even now, as you rest here, your brain is doing precisely what it knows how to do. Processing, filing, preparing. You don't need to direct any of it. It knows the way. Now we continue. The most common nightmare theme reported across cultures and age groups is being chased. In studies collecting nightmare content from thousands of participants across dozens of countries, chase dreams consistently appear at or near the top of every list. The pursuer varies, sometimes human, sometimes animal, sometimes a faceless and nameless presence. But the emotional core remains the same. You are running, and something is behind you. Sleep researchers interpret chase dreams as the mind's metaphor for avoidance, the psychological strategy of fleeing from thoughts, emotions, or situations that feel threatening to engage with directly. Chase nightmares appear to be particularly common during periods of life transition or high psychological pressure. Students report them before examinations. Professionals report them before major workplace events. People navigating relationship difficulties report them frequently. The connection to avoidance is not incidental. When waking life presents a problem that a person is circling around rather than confronting, the sleeping brain often generates a chase scenario, a vivid, embodied enactment of the avoidance strategy itself. The nightmare does not solve the problem, but it names it in the only language the sleeping mind knows how to use. Falling nightmares are the second most universally reported nightmare theme. The sensation of falling, hypnic yerks, the sudden convulsion at the edge of sleep, is distinct from falling dreams, but shares something of the same neurological substrate. In falling dreams proper, the falling is sustained, often accompanied by a vertiginous helplessness. Some researchers have linked falling dreams to feelings of loss of control or loss of status in waking life. Others have proposed a more neurological explanation, that falling sensations in dreams reflect the brain monitoring its own descending arousal as sleep deepens, occasionally misinterpreting its own quieting signals as physical danger. Dreams of teeth falling out are among the most widely reported, recurring nightmare themes. They appear in dream records across ancient cultures, medieval texts, and contemporary sleep studies. The universality of this particular dream is notable enough that psychologists have spent considerable effort trying to understand it. Some researchers have suggested a more prosaic explanation, that teeth loss dreams may in some cases correlate with physical dental awareness during sleep, including jaw clenching and bruxism. This hypothesis is intriguing but not yet firmly established, and the research remains limited and contested. What is clear is that these dreams are remarkably common, appearing across centuries and cultures, pointing to something deep and shared in the human experience of the body. Public humiliation dreams, appearing in public undressed, forgetting an important presentation, failing visibly in front of others, rank among the most common nightmare categories in adolescents and adults. Sleep researchers connect these dreams to the social evaluation system, the deeply wired primate brain circuits that track social standing and fear ostracism. Being excluded from the social group was, for most of human evolutionary history, a genuine survival threat. The brain's emotional system does not fully distinguish between ancient dangers and modern anxieties. Being embarrassed in a meeting activates some of the same neural alarm circuits as being exiled from a tribe. The relationship between nightmare content and daytime personality traits has been studied extensively. People who score higher on measures of neuroticism, a personality dimension reflecting emotional instability and vulnerability to negative emotions, consistently report more frequent and more distressing nightmares. People who score higher on openness to experience tend to report more vivid and elaborate dreams in general, both positive and negative. The sleeping mind does not operate in a separate space from the waking personality. It reflects the same emotional tendencies, the same sensitivities, the same characteristic ways of relating to uncertainty and threat. A phenomenon called sleep paralysis, in which a person wakes from REM sleep, but finds their body temporarily unable to move, often accompanied by vivid hallucinations, is closely related to nightmare experience and has shaped human mythology across cultures. In sleep paralysis, the motor inhibition of REM sleep persists into waking consciousness, producing a deeply unsettling sense of immobility, combined with dreamlike imagery that can feel completely real. The figures seen during sleep paralysis, pressing down on the chest, crouching in corners, standing in doorways, appear in folklore across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas under different names. The same brain mechanism has generated the same dread for millennia. Nightmare content is not entirely beyond the reach of waking intention. Research on pre-sleep suggestion, the practice of consciously choosing a theme or scenario before falling asleep, has shown that dreamers can influence the emotional tone and sometimes the content of their subsequent dreams. This is not a reliable or fully controllable process, but it is consistently above chance. The boundary between waking and sleeping mind is permeable in both directions. What you think about in the last minutes before sleep does not vanish when consciousness fades. It continues, quietly, to shape what the sleeping brain chooses to work with. The timing of nightmares within the sleep cycle carries clinical information. Nightmares occurring early in the night, in the first 2 or 3 hours of sleep, are more likely to be associated with physical causes, such as fever, pain, or certain medications affecting REM architecture. Nightmares occurring in the later hours, the 4th through 7th hour of sleep, are more typically psychologically driven, arising from the longer and more emotionally intense REM periods that accumulate as the night progresses. When a person wakes matters, and it tells a careful observer something about why. Recent research has explored the role of memory consolidation in nightmare generation with particular nuance. During sleep, the hippocampus, the brain's memory indexing center, communicates with the cortex to transfer memories from short-term to long-term storage. Emotionally charged memories, including those associated with fear or distress, are prioritized in this transfer process. If a person has experienced something frightening or deeply unsettling during the day, that experience is likely to receive elevated processing priority during sleep, increasing the probability that the emotional content appears in dream form. The night after a difficult day is statistically more likely to include a nightmare. Building on this, the hippocampus encodes emotion and narrative differently, and this distinction helps explain something many people notice intuitively. Nightmares often do not replay the disturbing event directly, but instead incorporate its emotional texture into an entirely different scenario. You might have a difficult day at work and dream not about work, but about being lost in a building, or being unable to reach someone you love by phone. What transfers into the dream is often the feeling more than the event itself, the fear without its specific origin story. The sleeping brain takes the emotional residue and weaves it into whatever narrative materials are nearest at hand. Chronic nightmare sufferers often develop a secondary anxiety around sleep itself, a conditioned unease about going to bed because of what awaits. This anticipatory anxiety can delay sleep onset, increase arousal at bedtime, and paradoxically worsen nightmare frequency through a mechanism involving cortisol and stress hormones. Sleep researchers call this the nightmare insomnia feedback loop. Nightmares disturb sleep. The disturbance creates unease about sleep. The unease worsens sleep quality, and the worsened sleep quality increases emotional intensity in dreams. Breaking this cycle is one of the primary goals of clinical nightmare treatment, and it requires addressing both the sleep disruption and the daytime anxiety simultaneously. In the past several years, researchers have begun investigating the potential role of gut microbiome health in sleep quality and dream content. The gut-brain axis, the bidirectional communication pathway between the gastrointestinal system and the central nervous system, influences the production of serotonin, a neurotransmitter critically involved in regulating REM sleep. Disruptions to gut flora, whether from dietary changes, antibiotic use, or illness, can alter serotonin dynamics and, through them, affect the architecture of REM sleep. While this research is still emerging and should be held lightly, it suggests that the factors shaping our nightmares may extend further into the body than previously understood. The emotional processing theory of dreaming, associated with researchers including Matthew Walker and Rosalind Cartwright, proposes that REM sleep serves as a kind of overnight emotional therapy. During REM, emotional memories are reprocessed in a neurochemical environment that is notably low in norepinephrine, the chemical most associated with stress and anxiety. This low norepinephrine state allows the brain to revisit emotionally charged memories without the full physiological arousal those memories typically produce. The idea is that sleep, by allowing you to feel the emotion with slightly less intensity each time, gradually takes the edge off painful or frightening experiences. Nightmares may be the moments when this process encounters material too charged for even the quieter chemistry of REM to fully modulate. And here, halfway through our second passage, something essential has come into focus. Nightmares are not simply the dark side of dreaming. They are the points of greatest emotional pressure in the brain's overnight processing system. The places where the work is hardest, where the material is most resistant, where the healing takes longest. They reveal, with uncomfortable precision, the fears that have not yet found their resolution. They are not enemies to be silenced. They are, in their imperfect way, the sleeping mind at its most earnestly engaged, working on the problems that matter most, using the only tools it has available in the dark. You're still here with me. Thoughts still flickering like candlelight. Just notice. Don't judge. Just notice where your mind is. We're exploring consciousness itself, the very thing doing the exploring right now. Strange, beautiful, and perfectly calm. Let's drift onward together. The fears that appear most persistently in nightmares are not random selections from a person's entire emotional life. Research on nightmare content across large populations consistently finds that the themes cluster around a relatively small number of primal categories: physical harm, social rejection, loss of loved ones, loss of control, failure, and death. These categories map almost perfectly onto the foundational threat categories identified by evolutionary psychologists, the classes of danger that posed the greatest survival risk to ancestral humans. Your nightmares are not about what troubled you last Tuesday. They are about what has frightened your species for 100,000 years. Death is a recurring and often underreported element in nightmare content. Many people dream of their own death or the death of loved ones, but hesitate to describe these dreams in clinical or research settings because of the discomfort the content produces, even in retrospect. Studies that have specifically investigated death-themed dreams have found that they are far more common than typically acknowledged, appearing across all age groups, peaking in middle adulthood, and carrying a particular quality of emotional intensity. Dreaming of death does not predict death. It appears to reflect the mind's ongoing and never entirely completed process of metabolizing mortality as a concept. Research on nightmares following grief has revealed a distinctive pattern. In the months immediately following a significant bereavement, people commonly experience nightmares that involve the deceased. Scenarios of loss, separation, or the person being in danger. Over time, if the grief is processing normally, these nightmares tend to shift. The deceased appears more peacefully. The dreamer has more agency in the dream, and the overall emotional tone becomes less distressing and more sad. Dream researchers have proposed that this progression reflects the brain's gradual work of reorganizing its internal representation of the person who has been lost, slowly, carefully, updating the emotional map to reflect a changed reality. The nightmares of creative people have received particular attention from researchers interested in the relationship between imagination and dreaming. Studies have found that individuals who score highly on measures of creative thinking tend to have more elaborate, narratively complex nightmares than those who score lower. The same cognitive flexibility that generates imaginative solutions during waking hours appears to generate more elaborate fear scenarios during sleep. There is something quietly poignant about this finding. The same mind that creates is also the mind that frightens itself most vividly. Creativity and nightmare intensity appear to draw from the same source. Climate anxiety, defined as chronic worry about environmental change and its consequences, has emerged as a documented contributor to nightmare content in recent years. Surveys conducted in the early part of this decade found that a notable portion of respondents, particularly those under 35, reported experiencing dreams and nightmares with climate-related imagery, floods, wildfires, and the loss of familiar landscapes. This represents a genuinely new category of collective fear making its way into the sleeping mind. The sleeping brain absorbs the fears of its cultural moment. What frightens the world eventually finds its way into individual dreams. Social media use close to bedtime has been linked in multiple studies to increased nightmare frequency, particularly among adolescents and young adults. The proposed mechanism involves both emotional arousal, exposure to distressing content before sleep, and blue light suppression of melatonin, which disrupts REM sleep architecture. But beyond the physiological effects, there appears to be a content priming effect. The emotional material absorbed during late-night scrolling appears to seed dream content. The brain does not cleanly separate the last waking hour from the first sleeping hour. What you feed your attention at the edge of sleep follows you inward. A fascinating recent line of research has examined whether nightmares might serve a social bonding function. The hypothesis, emerging from social sleep research, proposes that sharing dreams, and particularly nightmares, with trusted others may have served as an adaptive social behavior in human communities. Describing a frightening dream to a community member communicates information about perceived threats and emotional states, strengthens social bonds, and may trigger collective problem-solving around the feared scenario. In this reading, the nightmare is not only an internal event, it is a communication, something the brain generates, partly because, over evolutionary time, expressing fear to others was a survival strategy. The phenomenon of shared nightmare themes across unrelated individuals, people who have never met dreaming about nearly identical scenarios during the same period, has occasionally been noted in research contexts, particularly during times of collective stress, such as major disasters or pandemics. While the most dramatic interpretations of this move well beyond current scientific evidence, the more modest explanation is straightforward. People exposed to the same environmental stresses, consuming the same cultural material, and carrying the same species-wide fear vocabulary will naturally generate similar dream content. The dream is individual. The fear vocabulary is shared. Animal sleep offers an intriguing parallel to human nightmare research. Studies of sleeping dogs, cats, and rats have documented behavioral signs during REM sleep: twitching, vocalization, paddling movements that suggest active internal experience of some kind. Research on rats in particular has shown that hippocampal neurons replay the spatial patterns of recent waking experience during sleep, sequences nearly identical to those recorded while the animals were awake. Whether any of this constitutes subjective dreaming or something resembling fear remains genuinely beyond current science to determine. What we can say is that the sleeping brain's habit of revisiting and reprocessing experience is ancient and very broadly shared across the animal world. Here, at the midpoint of our journey, the picture has shifted considerably from where we began. We started with the nightmare as something that happens to us, a visitation, en intrusion, a disruption of rest. What the science has steadily revealed is something more intimate and more purposeful. The nightmare is not an interruption of the healing work of sleep. In most cases, it is the healing work itself, undertaken at the point of greatest difficulty, applied to the fears that most resist resolution. Your nightmares know your fears better than your waking mind typically admits, and they are working on them, nightly, in the only way sleep knows how. Let each breath guide you to realize time is yours, a separate stream that only you are living, while the vast universe continues to spin, expand, change. This second you're breathing, listening, is unique. Your mind has been working tonight, even in rest. It has been tending to things you cannot always see. Cherish this present moment, knowing that right now, your time is unlike any other moment in your entire life. And we continue drifting. As the night deepens, the nightmares that emerge carry a different quality than those of earlier hours. They become less about specific scenarios and more about feelings, pure anxiety without clear cause, diffuse unease without an identified threat. This shift reflects changes in REM sleep architecture as the night progresses. Later REM periods involve greater limbic system activation and relatively less hippocampal involvement, meaning the emotional content is present, but the narrative scaffolding is thinner. The fear arrives without its story. In some ways, this is the most accurate representation of what deep fear actually is. A feeling that exists before it finds a reason. The relationship between nightmares and creativity has intrigued researchers for a long time, and not only because of the correlation between creative thinking and vivid dream content. Several meaningful creative breakthroughs have been attributed by their creators to dreams with disturbing or unsettling elements. Mary Shelley's account of the origin of Frankenstein references a hypnagogic vision at the edge of sleep, a kind of waking dream. Composers, writers, and scientists across history have described disturbing dreams as unexpected sources of insight. The mind under pressure, generating metaphor and narrative in the dark, occasionally produces something the waking mind finds genuinely useful. The neurochemistry of REM sleep creates conditions that are, in a particular sense, uniquely suited to certain kinds of emotional insight. During REM, acetylcholine dominates, while norepinephrine and serotonin fall to their lowest levels of the entire day. This combination promotes associative thinking, The brain makes connections between items that share emotional or contextual links rather than logical ones. It is the same quality of thinking that appears in states of creative flow. Fear in this chemical environment does not follow rational cause and effect chains. It forms emotional constellations, clusters of associated feelings and images that, while not logically organized, carry a kind of emotional truth. Recurring nightmares, dreams that repeat the same scenario or emotional theme across many nights, sometimes across years or decades, are among the most clinically significant forms of nightmare experience. Between 60 and 75% of adults report having had a recurring nightmare at some point in their lives. Recurring nightmares are understood by most sleep researchers as evidence of incomplete emotional processing, the brain returning again and again to a piece of material it has not yet successfully filed. The repetition is not perverse. It is persist. The brain keeps trying. It is the material itself that keeps resisting resolution. Recurring nightmares carry a particular clinical significance, precisely because of what their repetition reveals. Unlike single nightmares, which may draw from many emotional sources at once, a recurring nightmare tends to crystallize around a single unresolved theme, a specific loss, a persistent shame, a relationship left unprocessed, a fear that was never given adequate attention in waking life. Sleep therapists often begin their work with recurring nightmares for this reason. The dream that returns is the mind's most insistent message to itself, and the one most worth listening to. The neuroscience of nightmare memory, why some nightmares are remembered with extraordinary vividness, while others vanish before waking, involves the interplay between the amygdala and the hippocampus during and after REM sleep. Nightmares that produce sufficient emotional arousal to activate the amygdala strongly are more likely to be encoded by the hippocampus and transferred into long-term memory. This is the same mechanism by which emotionally intense waking experiences are preferentially remembered. The nightmare that wakes you at 3 a.m. is remembered precisely because the emotional intensity was strong enough to trigger the brain's memory consolidation priority system. Some nightmares appear to involve a quality that sleep researchers have called meta-awareness, a partial recognition within the dream that something is wrong or not quite real, without the full lucidity that would allow the dreamer to take control. In this state, the dreamer experiences the nightmare's fear while simultaneously having a faint, frustrating sense that they should be able to stop it. This intermediate state between ordinary dreaming and full lucid dreaming is surprisingly common, reported by a significant minority of people during disturbing dreams. It is one of the most evocative experiences the sleeping mind produces. Fear combined with the dim, insufficient light of self-awareness. Research on nightmares in people with highly active imaginations has led to the concept of fantasy-prone personality, a trait characterized by a tendency toward deep imaginative engagement, vivid mental imagery, and blurred boundaries between imagination and reality. People who score highly on this trait tend to have more frequent and more intense nightmares, more vivid dream recall, and a higher incidence of sleep paralysis. The relationship between imagination and nightmare intensity appears to be a consistent one. The same inner landscape that generates richness and creativity also, at night, generates more elaborate and more emotionally overwhelming fear. The content of nightmares can be influenced by the position in which a person sleeps. Studies have found that sleeping on the left side is associated with more negative and disturbing dream content than sleeping on the right side. The proposed mechanism involves cardiac awareness. Sleeping on the left side may increase the sensation of the heartbeat through pressure on the chest, which the dreaming brain interprets as physiological arousal. And arousal during sleep tends to push dream content toward threat-relevant themes. The sleeping brain reads its own body continuously. The body's signals become the dream's raw material. Temperature has a documented effect on nightmare frequency and intensity. Sleeping in a room that is too warm disrupts REM sleep architecture and can increase the emotional charge of dream content. Most sleep researchers suggest that temperatures above the low 70s Fahrenheit, roughly above 22 degrees Celsius, are begin to affect sleep quality measurably, though individual variation is considerable. Sleeping on the cooler side of that range, somewhere between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit for most people, is associated with more stable REM sleep and, by extension, calmer dream content. The temperature of the room is, quietly, part of the dream's environment. The nightmares of people who are blind offer a window into the fundamental architecture of fear in dreams. People who have been blind since birth do not have visual nightmares. They experience nightmares that are auditory, tactile, olfactory, and emotional. People who lost their sight after childhood continue to have visual nightmares, with visual content gradually fading over years as the visual cortex undergoes reorganization. This tells us something worth sitting with. The visual quality of nightmares is not inherent to nightmare processing. It is the brain using its most developed sensory channel to construct the fear narrative. The fear itself is independent of the form it takes. Cross-cultural studies of nightmare content have identified both universal themes and culturally specific ones. The universal themes: falling, being chased, physical harm, loss, appear across all human cultures studied, supporting the idea that they draw from evolutionarily conserved fear systems. Culturally specific themes vary considerably. Supernatural entities in nightmare reports differ dramatically across cultures, as do social scenarios. Because social threats are defined differently across societies, the architecture of fear is universal. The specific actors cast in its narratives are drawn from the cultural material available to the sleeping mind. Among the more recent areas of nightmare research is the study of what happens in the brain in the minutes immediately following a nightmare awakening. Studies have found that the heart rate can remain noticeably elevated for 5 to 10 minutes after waking from a nightmare, even as the dreamer comes fully to consciousness and recognizes the experience as a dream. The amygdala, once activated, does not immediately return to baseline. This lingering physiological echo, the body carrying the dream forward into waking, is one reason why disturbing dreams can color the mood of an entire morning, even when their content is no longer consciously accessible. The practice of keeping a dream journal, writing down dream content immediately upon waking, has been studied both as a research tool and as a therapeutic one. Consistent dream journaling tends to improve dream recall over time, which carries both benefits and costs. Greater recall means access to more material from the processing work the sleeping brain is doing overnight. But it also means more exposure to distressing content in the form of written nightmare records. Dream journals used therapeutically are often combined with guided reflection, helping the journaler engage with the nightmare content analytically and compassionately, rather than simply being re-immersed in it. We now understand that nightmares are deeply woven into the brain's emotional regulation system, not as its failures but as its efforts. They represent the sleeping mind, working at the boundary of its capacity, applying its overnight emotional processing toolkit to material that is genuinely difficult. And the fears they surface are not arbitrary. They are the fears that matter most, the ones that have been deferred, avoided, or insufficiently metabolized in waking life. Nightmares are the mind's honest inventory. They show us what remains unfinished in the deepest ledger of our emotional experience. The dreaming brain constructs nightmares from a combination of episodic memory, specific personal experiences, and semantic memory, general knowledge and beliefs about how the world works. This combination is why nightmares can be simultaneously deeply personal and universally recognizable. The scenario is yours. The fear architecture it draws on is everyone's. A nightmare about failing an exam is assembled from your specific memories of school, your particular relationship with failure, your individual experience of being judged. But the underlying fear of inadequacy and social evaluation is a thread running through every human mind. Sleep researchers have documented a phenomenon called dream incorporation of daytime concerns, sometimes called the day residue effect, in which elements of waking experience from the previous 1 to 2 days appear in dream content. This effect is particularly strong for emotionally significant events and for concerns that received significant conscious attention. The day residue effect in nightmare research is consistent with the emotional processing framework. The brain preferentially processes recent and emotionally weighted material first. If something troubled you deeply yesterday, the chance that it will appear in tonight's dream, in some form, however transformed, is meaningfully elevated. The role of self-compassion in nightmare recovery has been studied in recent years with interesting results. People who score higher on measures of self-compassion, the ability to treat their own suffering with the same kindness they would offer to another person, tend to recover more quickly from nightmare awakenings and report less daytime distress from nightmare content. The proposed mechanism involves the ability to hold the nightmare experience at some emotional distance, to observe the fear without being fully consumed by it. In this sense, how you relate to your nightmares upon waking may matter as much as the nightmares themselves. Breathing practices, specifically slow, diaphragmatic breathing, have been shown to reliably reduce amygdala activation in both waking and sleep contexts. People who practice regular slow breathing exercises show altered autonomic nervous system responses to stress, including lower baseline heart rates and faster recovery from fear responses, While direct research on the effect of breathing practices on nightmare frequency is still developing, the underlying neurological mechanism is well established. Calming the physiological arousal system before sleep changes the chemical environment into which the dreaming brain descends. A calmer body is slightly more likely to find calmer dreams. The nightmares of people in high-pressure professions, emergency workers, military personnel, healthcare providers, have received increasing research attention in recent years. Studies have found elevated rates of nightmare disorder in these populations, connected to occupational exposure to distressing events and to the demands of roles that require suppressing visible fear responses during working hours. When that suppression is sustained across years, it appears to create a kind of overflow into the sleeping hours. The fear that cannot be fully processed during the day finds its outlet at night. The nightmare is where suppressed emotion eventually insists on being heard. Cognitive behavioral therapy, adapted for insomnia, known as CBTI, has been shown to reduce nightmare frequency as a secondary benefit, even when nightmares are not the primary treatment target. By improving sleep efficiency, reducing time spent awake in bed, and addressing the anxious thoughts around sleep, CBTI appears to alter sleep architecture in ways that make nightmares less likely to occur. Improved sleep consolidation reduces the fragmentation of REM sleep that often precedes nightmare episodes. This is one of several findings suggesting that the conditions of sleep, not only its content, significantly shape the nightmare experience. The subjective intensity of nightmares is not always correlated with their narrative drama. Some of the most distressing nightmares reported by individuals involve no dramatic external events, no monsters, no disasters, no physical danger, but consist instead of sustained, suffocating emotional states. Profound sadness, a sense of being utterly lost, the feeling of being invisible or unloved. These nightmares of emotional atmosphere, rather than narrative drama, often leave a more lasting residue than more conventionally frightening ones. The brain can generate deep unease without a script. Sometimes the feeling alone, undressed by any specific scenario, is the most honest nightmare of all. Sound during sleep has been explored as a potential tool for influencing nightmare content through a technique called targeted memory reactivation. In this approach, a particular sound is associated with a positive or neutral emotional state during waking hours and then played quietly during sleep to reactivate that association. Early research suggests that this technique can shift the emotional tone of dream content in predictable directions. The research is preliminary and requires replication at scale, but it represents a genuinely intriguing possibility that the emotional quality of dreams might, in some cases, and be gently influenced through the doorway of the sleeping senses. The nightmares experienced during fever states occupy a distinctive category: febrile dreams and nightmares. The intensely vivid, often deeply unsettling dreams that accompany high body temperature appear to reflect the immune system's interaction with brain function. Inflammatory cytokines released during infection cross the blood-brain barrier and alter neurotransmitter dynamics in ways that intensify REM sleep and increase the emotional charge of dream content. Fever nightmares are often described as more vivid, more bizarre, and more distressing than ordinary nightmares. They are also typically more quickly forgotten, fading rapidly as the fever resolves. The body's immune response, at its peak intensity, briefly transforms the dreaming mind. The nightmares that remain with us longest, that we remember decades after they occurred, tend to share a particular quality. The fear of losing someone before we were ready to say goodbye, the shame around a part of ourselves we had not yet accepted, the grief for something that had not yet happened but was already, in some quiet way, inévitable. These nightmares endure because they were true. Not literally true, but emotionally precise. Accurate portraits of fears that mattered, painted in the only medium the sleeping mind has available. You might be feeling tired now. That's perfectly fine. Breathe slowly. Feel the cycles. Your breath. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. A small cycle within the vast process of your own living. Like the tide that pulls and returns without effort. Like seasons that change without rushing. You are also part of an eternal rhythm. You don't need to hold on to any of this. Let everything unfold in its perfect order. We're almost there now. Nightmares are, at their core, a form of communication. The sleeping brain speaks in the only language it has: image, sensation, emotion, narrative. And what it speaks about, consistently, across cultures and centuries, is the things that matter most deeply. The fears it surfaces are not trivial. They are the fears we carry most carefully, most privately, most quietly in our waking hours. Every nightmare contains, somewhere within it, a wish, not always a visible one, but somewhere beneath the fear, the wish to be safe, to be loved, to be forgiven, to be found. The brain generates fear in service of these older, quieter longings. The nightmare chases you because you want to stop running. It shows you loss because you want to hold on. The mind that dreams is the same mind that hopes. The same neural systems that generate fear also generate anticipation. The same imagination that creates the nightmare also creates the vision of something better. They are not separate faculties. They are one faculty, turned in different directions by the particular weather of a given night. Research suggests that people who have lived with recurring nightmares and eventually found their way through them often describe a subtle shift in their relationship to fear. Not the absence of fear, but a slightly greater capacity for sitting with it, a slightly smaller urgency to escape. The nightmare, endured long enough and met with enough compassion, sometimes teaches something that waking life cannot easily teach. Your deepest fears are not shameful. They are universal. The fear of loss, of rejection, of failure, of death. These are the fears of every human being who has ever lived. In every place, in every time, your nightmares are not evidence of weakness. They are evidence of caring. Only a mind that loves something can fear losing it. The sleeping brain does not judge the content it processes. It takes what is given and does its best. The nightmare is not a verdict on who you are. It is a record of what you have encountered and what you have not yet finished carrying. It is the brain's honest accounting of the emotional debts that still remain open. In many cultures around the world, nightmares were regarded not as signs of weakness, but as messages requiring attention. Communications from a deeper layer of experience that deserve to be listened to and honored. While these frameworks belong to cultural and spiritual traditions rather than to empirical science, the underlying intuition is one that modern sleep research does not entirely contradict. The nightmare has something to say. The question has always been whether we are willing to hear it. The brain never stops trying to keep you safe. Even in its most unsettling productions, the nightmare is organized around this purpose. The fear is the medicine, clumsily administered. The distress is the attempt at resolution, imperfectly executed. Your sleeping mind is always, however awkwardly, working on your behalf, and the effort continues every single night, without fail. For as long as you live, fear, met with curiosity rather than avoidance, tends to lose some of its weight. This is as true in dreams as in waking life. The nightmare that is examined, held in daylight, written down, spoken of, thought about gently, often loses the quality of inevitability that made it most distressing. It becomes something that happened, rather than something that is always about to happen. The word for nightmare in many languages carries within it an older word, a word for pressure, for weight, for something pressing down. The nightmare was, across cultures, the sensation of something heavy sitting on the chest in the dark. What sleep science has gently revealed is that the weight was always ours. And what is ours can, in time, be set down. Sleep, at its deepest, is a form of trust. To fall asleep is to release control, to let the body and brain continue their work without the oversight of conscious attention. Nightmares are the moments when the material being processed is too heavy for that trust to hold completely. They are the seams showing in the otherwise seamless fabric of sleep. They do not mean the fabric is broken. They mean it is being stretched. The most unsettling dreams are often the ones closest to something true. Not literally true, but emotionally precise. They have a quality, even in their most unusual imagery, of pointing at something real, something that matters, something the waking mind prefers not to look at directly. The nightmare holds the gaze steady. It says, "Look here. This matters." Even the most disturbing nightmare eventually ends. The brain, for all the intensity it can generate in sleep, is also the author of waking. Morning comes. The nightmare dissolves. The body breathes normally again. The light returns. This cycle, fear and its passing, repeats across an entire life. And each time morning comes, it has always come before. It will come again. The fears that nightmares surface are not permanent. They are current. They reflect the specific emotional weather of this period of life. This constellation of relationships. This chapter of experience. As the chapters change, the nightmares change. The fears that visited your 20s rarely visit your 40s. The brain keeps updating its emotional inventory. The nightmare of today is not the nightmare of always. Could nightmares reveal your deepest fears? They already have. In every culture, in every age, in every person who has ever lain awake in the dark with a fading vision and a settling heart, they have revealed that we are afraid of losing what we love, of being found inadequate, of being alone, of time. And in revealing it, they have done something quietly generous. They have shown us that these fears are not ours alone. The science of dreams is still young. The full architecture of what happens in the sleeping mind remains, in many of its most fundamental aspects, genuinely open. What researchers know with confidence is that the process is purposeful, the content is meaningful, and the fears that surface in nightmares are not random. What remains open is the full depth of what the sleeping mind is doing and why. The mystery is not a failure of science. It is an invitation that the science has not yet fully accepted. You have navigated your nightmares to reach this night. Every disturbing dream you have ever had, you have survived. Every fear that surfaced in sleep, you have woken from. This record, every single morning of your life, is the clearest evidence available that the nightmares have not won. They have come, they have gone, and you have continued. The sleeping mind is remarkably resilient. It absorbs the losses, the disappointments, the fears of a waking life, and processes them night after night with whatever tools are available. It does not always succeed. Sometimes the processing is incomplete. Sometimes the nightmare returns, but the effort does not stop. The brain keeps working. The healing continues, even when it is not visible. In the quiet hours of deep night, something very old is happening inside you. A process laid down over hundreds of millions of years of biological evolution. The sleeping mind sorting, filing, processing, releasing. The nightmare is one sound that process makes, one signal in a long, complex symphony of repair. It is not the whole story. It is one note. And in the end, the deepest truth that sleep science offers about nightmares is this. The mind that generates fear in the dark is the same mind that wakes to the light. They are not in opposition. They are one system, working across the boundary of sleep and waking to do the same essential thing: to make meaning from experience, to metabolize what has been lived, to prepare the self for what is coming. The nightmare and the morning are partners in the work of being alive. The brain, even in its most unsettled productions, is generating something like narrative. It is trying to tell a story that makes sense of the fear. And stories, however distressing, have a quality that pure fear does not. Stories have the possibility of an ending. The brain knows this. It has always known this. The nightmare is not a statement. It is a draft. What you carry into sleep tonight, the worries, the unresolved questions, the quiet fears, will be met by a brain that has been doing this work for your entire life. It has processed harder things than tonight. It has navigated darker waters, and it has brought you, every single morning, back to the light. The fears that surface in the night are real. The feelings are real. The care behind them, the love for what you fear losing, the concern for what matters most, is real. But the nightmare itself is a construction, a story. And stories, unlike the fears they carry, can be rewritten. The sleeping brain is working for you, even now, as your eyes grow heavy and your thoughts begin to soften. It is preparing to do the work it does every night, sorting through the day's emotional material, filing what can be filed, processing what can be processed, and setting aside, gently, what requires more time. You do not need to help it. It knows its way. The real answer to why nightmares reveal your deepest fears is not found in the amygdala or the REM cycle or the neurochemistry of sleep. It is found in the simple, ancient fact that you care. You care about the people you love. You care about the life you are building. You care about being adequate to what is asked of you. The nightmare is fear in service of love. Imperfect, distressing, and utterly human. And underneath its most unsettling images, always, is the shape of something worth protecting. And so, our quiet journey through the science of nightmares comes to a gentle close. We traveled from the amygdala firing in the dark hours of early morning, through the ancient evolutionary architecture of threat simulation, to the discoveries of recent years, showing that the brain's overnight emotional processing reaches its most effortful work precisely in those moments of greatest fear. We glimpsed the chase dreams and falling dreams of 100 cultures and found underneath them all the same small cluster of primal human fears. We arrived, finally, at the truth that the nightmare, that distressing, imperfect, recurring visitor, is, in the most fundamental sense, the sleeping mind trying its hardest to help. Nightmares remind us that the sleeping mind is never merely passive. Much of the most important emotional work of a human life happens in the dark, behind the closed door of consciousness, in the hours when the waking world has gone quiet. The fear that surfaces in sleep is the fee the brain charges for the healing it is attempting. By pausing to understand what our nightmares carry, we glimpse the extraordinary care buried inside our most difficult experiences. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can, as deep as possible. Think about unity of every thought, every fear, every dream, every moment of waking and sleeping that has brought you to exactly this point in your life. You are not separate from the fears that surfaced tonight, and you are not separate from the healing that sleep is always attempting to complete. Think about the quiet continuity between the mind that dreams and the mind that wakes. They are one thing, one patient, working thing. Let your entire being dissolve into the gentle darkness, into the soft, unhurried gravity pulling you towards sleep. Prepare for deep sleep. No boundaries left, only peace. This quiet journey into the science of your sleeping mind was made for anyone who has ever lain awake, wondering why their dreams disturb them. Sharing it softly with someone who needs it tonight could be exactly the comfort another restless mind is looking for. One quiet tap, one peaceful night at a time. But there's no need to do anything now. Nothing at all. You've traveled far tonight, farther than most journeys take you, through the neural architecture of fear, through the ancient vocabulary of the sleeping mind, through 100 facts that quietly rearranged what nightmares mean. You can allow these thoughts to fade now, like the last images of a dream at the edge of waking, present, then softer, then simply part of everything, leaving only the warm, unheld calm behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if the bed itself is gently, patiently holding all the weight you have been carrying. You don't need to hold any of it now. It was never yours to carry into sleep. If sleep comes, let it carry you the way all honest things eventually arrive, not with force, but with quiet inevitability, into a realm where the fears of the night have done their work and are resting. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you, ready to continue the journey. But if they're closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and warm. Tomorrow, your sleeping mind will still be there, still working, still processing, still tending to the things that matter most. The ancient circuits of care and fear will still be turning, but tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, sleepy soul, and remember, even the most distressing dream has always, eventually, given way to morning. Good night.